Well, on our little TEA20, we've come to the stage where we can pop a couple of pistons on the rods, and just a few little things we need to look out for. When I pulled the piston off there, I've showed you how to knock them out and do that sort of thing, and got pinged for saying there was an explosion here, but that's all right, there is. That's what I call it anyway. And look, there's a couple of things we need to mention here, and one of them was in the Conrod. Now, for this gudgeon bush up the top here to be lubed, and look, it's a bit hard to get you to see that, but for that there to be lubed, it actually takes oil from the main bearing journal, and that comes down to the big end journal here, and that force feeds up when everything lines up, and it pushes oil up for your gudgeon pin here, and your gudgeon pin sits in there, and there's also a little bleed off line here, and it's just a tiny little hole. It's just there. So, and that bleeds a bit out. So you just have to make sure that's all free. There's no rubbish. Blow it out with air. Make sure that you're not introducing rubbish into it. Excuse me, I'll lean across there for a minute. Sometimes I just run a bit of brake cleaner up there just to, and see it's coming out the other end. So brake cleaner's a good thing. It dries into the air, so that's no worries. Now, there's two ways of doing this job. One of them is put the piston on the rod, then hold the rod in the vise, and I often do it that way, and that keeps the piston nice and steady for putting the rings and that on. But for the sake of the bench here, we'll just put one together here, just to show you. I'm just wiping that brake clean up a little bit. It does evaporate, but I don't know, just having a wipe. Now, this stuff here, it's diesel power motor assembly grease. Now, look, you don't need this stuff. With the workshop over the years, we've put a lot of engines together, and we've used diesel power parts sometimes, and this is a pack that they bring out, and it's motor assembly grease, and I've got a heap of these. I'm just wiping it up there, and there's a heap of, they have a little kit, and it's got O-ring and oil seal rubber grease, head bolt grease, and it's got a couple of little socks to put over Conrod bolts if the Conrods have studs in them. And look, I'm using this because I've got it. If you haven't got this, don't be too fussed. Get the old oil can out, and the same engine oil that you're putting in the vehicle, in the motor, use that. At this stage you probably should clean your oil can a little bit, because you don't want to introduce any other rubbish. My oil can ends up everywhere, so this one, so we'll just make sure there's nothing that can get in around there. Just little things, hopefully it makes a better job for you. Okay, so with the ring set, if we bring the ring set down here a little bit, we have the Conrod bolts, we have the lock tabs. The lock tabs, they're a Sparex part number. I believe the part number of the locking tabs is S42420, and they're just new lock tabs where you can fold, once you've got them tensioned up, you can fold the tags over. There's the old ones, so they're pretty well the same. They're always a little bit tight in this hole here, I find, but it's no big deal. But once you get that down through, you torque the Conrod up, and then you fold the safety tabs over there. So we don't need to worry about that just for the moment. Now I'll get my El Cheapo little pliers going here, and with it on the bench here, I'll start at the bottom, and with your oil control ring, now your oil control ring is the fat one with the little holes in it. I think you can see that. Yep. And normally oil control rings, it doesn't matter top or bottom, it just doesn't matter at all. So I'll pop that into my El Cheapo pliers. We'll pop that ring onto the piston. Now, where that sits, as in the ring gap at the moment, I don't worry about that yet. When we slide it into the bore, we double check that we have everything where it needs to be. So, ring number 4. And look, have a look at your rings. I covered sliding them down into the bore in an earlier video. So, on these TE20s, you're looking at 14, oh look, probably anywhere from 10 to 15 thou ring gap. These I measured at 14 thou. They're on the outer limits, but that's okay. So there's the 2 oil rings on. And now we just start with the compression rings. And you can see ring 1, ring 2, ring 3, but you know, it's just sensible to start from the bottom. Now this one here, you can see just marked here, it says top, and it's got 2 dots. So you have to be mindful of that being on the top. So the word top has to be to the top. Now the second ring down, it's the same, top, and it's got 2 dots there, so we have to pop it on. I don't even put any oil on at this stage, there's just no need. And this top ring, well, it has top and 2 dots as well. So I'm not sure if I can get that to where you can see it. Yeah, you can just see it there. So we'll just pop that on here. And like I say, where the ring gaps are, I don't worry about that too much at this stage, but that oil ring, I would have the gap here. Then this other oil ring, I'd have the gap at 180 degrees. I don't put them on the thrust surface here. Then where this one is here, so then I'd put this compression ring, the bottom compression ring, I'd put that on that side. Then this next compression ring, bring it around there. Not quite lined up with the gudgeon. And then the next one, I'll bring him around this other side here. So actually I'll put him there and I'll bring this one around a bit. So the top 2 rings, I'll try and make sure the gap are exactly opposite each other before we go in. And so that way any compression gases that come down, they've got to come down through their little gap there. They've got to work all the way around to this next gap, and then they've got to work not quite as far, but there's not as much pressure there either, to the next one. So, but look, we won't get too involved with all that just at the moment. Now the gudgeon pin, yep, there's a tight fit there. Now, in the book, it says about heating the pistons, and you expand the pistons and then you slide the pin in. Look, I've only ever just bumped them through and never had a worry. So we'll put a bit of, this lube might be getting a bit old, it's getting a bit hard to push out of the tube, and I have had it round for a long time, so we'll spread that around in there. Bit in here to help it all through. Bit round there. It's bloody sticky shit. Oh look, that's why I was having a mess before. It's come out of my old tube. That's what you get for hoarding. You hoard all this old junk. Oh, and then by the time you get to use it, geez, past its use by date. Okay, so we can pop this in. There we go. Now, one thing to be mindful of is if you take notice of this Conrod here, how it comes down, faces this way, faces me, if we put this Conrod here, then we notice that the split in the piston is on the open side of the Conrod. So that means, on our instance, we have to copy that. So spend time and check everything. They look exactly the same. Now I should have some Circlips here somewhere. Here we go. Now the Circlips have a flat side and a side with a slight dome where they've been stamped out. So you put the dome side against the Gudgeon pin. So and I always put the gaps to the bottom. I don't know why I always do that, but I just do it. There's no reason, no sensible reason that I'm aware of. And around this other side, we push him down, make sure he's all the way home. And the advantage of putting the piston on before doing this is that you're not rattling those rings around. But look, on a soft surface like I have here, I'm not concerned. We'll pop that. Okay. Now look, normally I don't put the bearings in now, and the reason is they can just get a bit of dust on them and things like that or something until you're ready to put them in. So at this stage here, you see the little groove, the little bearing locating tab here, and then you can just see a shadow of where the other one went. So if you just follow those shadow marks, that will go in like that. I'll just do them up a couple. And to check if you have the cap on the right way, check your numbers. This is number 3. You can see a number 3 there. Just check that. So I'll putt along, I'll put the others together, and we'll come back and I'll just show you the end result. And look at that. With the wonders of video, it only took a minute. So at this stage, just take a moment to have a look at a few things. And one of them is check that the pistons are on the Conrods the right way. Takes a moment to do, no big deal. This is the same. Check that all your Gudgeon retaining circlips are in. A minute now and can save you a lot of heartache later. And the other thing too is if you do take the time to have a look now, later on when you're wondering about it, you can say, oh no, I actually took the time to look at that, so I know they're right. So there you go. That's just fitting the pistons to the Conrods, putting the rings on. They're ready to go into the tractor now, but we have a few other jobs we've got to do yet, so we'll just see which way we go with it.